There is no longer a clear division between what is foreign and what is domestic. The world economy, the world environment, the world AIDS crisis, the world arms race, they affect us all. Today, as an old order passes, the new world is more free.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Outside the Box News and Views with Jim Pasilio.
And Lisa Mullinex.
Today we will be speaking with Mark Koernke and Nancy Koernke. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
This is our third segment with Mark. Nancy's joining us for this one. We wanted to touch on a topic that we didn't quite finish in our last segment about the Federal Reserve System and the National ID Act. Your finishing comments on those?
Well, as we discussed, of course, money in the last segment, money touches everybody in one form or another. Each and every day you're in some form of transaction. As we said before, to be civilized. We don't want to bonk anybody on the head with a rock to take what they have. So we have an equitable system that's in place, or we had an excellent money system before. We have a charade right now. It's not that we have a bad form of government, and it's not that we have a bad banking system per se. We had an excellent mechanism in place. We're not using it. We have the tools at hand. We have good politicians, like we mentioned before. Ron Paul, who's running for the presidency in the Republican
Yes.
Party, he has discussed the issue. There are many individual dissertations that he's given when he's been before Congress on this very subject, on the money supply, talking about bad currency, talking about the Federal Reserve. So it's not just us here, in this program. There are many other educated people around the country that are very knowledgeable that this is a failed system. Now, here's the thing, is that it's a failed system because you have to keep, they try to keep it secret from everybody in many different ways. And one of the things that I wanted to demonstrate is, before anybody, in fact, while the Patriot Movement was talking about the money change, and by the way, this was printed by your Federal Reserve, that foreign Federal Reserve, as Federal Express. This particular document was generated for Federal Reserve employees and was eventually going to be released to the public. We had this in hand when it first came from the GPO, the Government Printing Office. Now, as you'll notice, this explains all of the changes in the currency that, of course, were done, that's right, many years ago now by comparison, back towards the 90s. And at the time, before this actually took place, ladies and gentlemen, they absolutely denied that this was going to happen. They denied that this currency change would eventually, of course, change the way the money was actually handled. Now, what did this do? And this is, of course, the document itself. Your money matters. Cute little phrase there, by the way. Yes, it does matter, but most importantly is it's not money. It's paper currency, or actually it's script. It's a military script. Well, it matters, but it matters that we actually have sound currency in place. And the next step, where they're going to go with this, as we would expect, is the cashless society, for instance. That's obviously where they're headed. We're printing so much paper, we can't keep track of it all. We've discussed this in many different programs where we've covered this on the air when I do radio and when other people have been brought up as guests who specialize in currency or in the market, that we're going to get to the point where there obviously is an agenda to change the currency. Now, of course, the controlled media will go, oh, you crazy patriots, you guys over there just don't know what you're talking about. And yet, as we can go to the internet now, we can see on YouTube, we've seen this on several of different programs where they've, or sites where they've saved the comments that are made of all places on CNN, ABC, NBC. And what did they talk about? The Amero.
Yep, to bring the Amero in. But I think there's also another way that immediately that we can have an effect on what they're doing with our money. What's feeding the New World Orders a lot is the oil and the money from the oil. And for the general person out there, it's as simple as buying your gas at Citgo, where the money is going to go to Chavez and not the Federal Reserve System or the World Bank or the IMF. And another way that they're feeding it is through the debt. That's how they get their money. That's how they're convincing the general public to go out and spend money that they don't have. And it's this debt that is also feeding this system. And these are steps that could be taken immediately by the people to hurt them monetarily.
Well, good point there. Have you ever thought about this? Okay, here's a challenge for all of your listeners. Reach into your wallet, select the credit card of your choice, go over to your desk or go over to your utility drawer, pull out Mr. Scissors, and let's see how you hesitate cutting it up.
Personally, I don't have a credit card.
Oh, I agree. We're the same situation here. But you see, my point is, you see,
they live off it. They've made it so that the money is so short, people can't afford to live without that card, and they're just feeding that debt, which is getting them more money.
And again, you, as we've said in an earlier episode, you cannot pay off a credit card debt with another credit card. You cannot continue to accelerate this debt. Now here's the thing. When we talk about credit cards, the Federal Reserve money system is costing us money every time we make a dollar bill. When we make a $1 bill, it costs us at least 11 cents. It may actually be more now. We don't know what the compounded interest is. We know that
the point, that compounded interest. And it's been compounding since they put it into inception in 1933. Now, if you compound the interest on all the money that has been printed between now and then, gee, where's the national debt coming from?
Our dollar's worth about a penny today compared to the 1913
4
dollar.
cents. 4 cents.
4
right
cents.
now.
which is interesting too, because as we pointed out, it's how much does it cost to print the bill?
Costs more to print
11
right now.
cents
If it's
before.
only, yeah, it costs us 11 cents, but how much does it cost just for the rag paper and for the special ink? That's probably not very cheap, really, when you look
No.
at it, because everything's custom manufactured and it's a trade secret that's kept from everyone. So I don't think we probably got 4 cents, more like 10 cents tied up just in the making of the paper, if they wanted to be honest. And then, of course, we got another problem is we're not being told how many Federal Reserve notes are actually in service now. This is a major change. That means that somebody's probably printing something out on those printing presses. What would that be?
Mr. Koernke, if I may interject here, you made a statement with regard to the Amero. Could you please explain to our viewers what exactly the Amero is and how you foresee that working into our urge towards a cashless society?
Exactly. The next step right now, as we've already seen from many different reports around the country, is that they're hoping to merge the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Now, this is a disaster for the American people, and I've asked many times, we have a Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence. Mexico is a totally different nation from us with regard to structure, both economic and with regard to their political structure. Canada is the same way. Canada is a totally different political creature. It has many alien elements to its government that do not exist in the United States. The money, and of course the changing of our currency, is one of the ways that they will infiltrate into our system and force us to acquiesce, because if they change the currency and they bring these other partners into play, these other partners can be used to pressure the American people in how many different ways economically. You're looking at an equity with regard to currency exchange in Mexico. It has to be equalized. They have to come up, and we've already been seeing this just across the water to our north of where we're sitting right now. Guys, for the first time in our history, we're looking at almost a 1-to-1 parity between what?
the Canadian dollar and the American dollar.
When have we ever seen this?
We haven't.
Guys, I'm 52 cents on the dollar, 73 cents on the dollar. The only reason you want to go to Canada is because you can get stuff cheap.
Well, the CFR documents show that they want three world economies, in which they've almost succeeded in getting them, with the European economy, the Asian economy, and the North American economy, or unions as they call them.
Now, one of the tie-ins here that we must stress to all of your listeners is that, again, what is it that how are we going to benefit? How would any of us sitting here or any of our people listening benefit from this alliance? We have an excellent system. We have, like I said, the Declaration of Independence, that's our property. The Constitution and Bill of Rights, that's our property. In order for this whole thing to work, they have to, and this has been the nut, this is what the old squirrel trying to figure out, remember like the old Chip and Dale trying to figure out how to get that thing open. And they'll drop it from a tree, it didn't work. They shook it and they hit it with a hammer, it didn't work. They put TNT next to it, and they blew down a building and knocked down some top. Oh, wait a minute, no, that's kind of a good parable there,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah. And that still didn't quite work to get us to surrender our liberty completely. So there's something they've got to do that's going to be a 1, 2, 3 punch. No single hit has done it yet, because we're resilient. Americans are resilient. So what are we going to see? Well, an attack
More
on-
incrementalization, what they've been doing, because they
Exactly.
can't do a frontal attack because it's not going to work. So they're doing it through incrementalization of all of our rights.
And I think what most people don't understand at this point in the general populace is the fact that when we do merge into the North American Union, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, they will no longer cease to exist as we know them today.
March.
Not only that, the international courts will have jurisdiction
Belgium.
upon us.
And those are, it is absolutely critical. And that is one of the things that people have a misconception about the militia. In a nutshell, we have taken an oath to protect the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence from all enemies, foreign and domestic, the same as our military. So that is utmost in our mind. And if you believe in our system the way it's set up, then 16th jurisprudence has to be enforced, and that any law from its inception is null and void if it is not hold up to that bar of the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence.
It's as if it were null and void. Well, it's null and void. It's as if it never existed. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that we have to face right now is we are pressed to come up with a peaceable solution to this issue, but we are obligated under both the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution itself, the Articles of Confederation, which of course all of these documents spell out basically that the power is in the hands of the people, that these documents are a protection for us upon government, a chain upon government. We have a scurrilous band of robbers who are trying to figure out how to break free from those chains so that they can use bad government on us. Now, what do we mean by bad government? Well, we have specific guidelines that are already laid down. There's always this claim that, well, we're a nation of laws. A nation of laws. Well, but apparently only one-sided, whereas it should be for all of the people. We have a group that have tried to write themselves out of these restrictions or these controls.
That would be the federal world government that
Exactly.
is trying to control the whole world's population.
And of course are proposing the idea that our form, and this is one of the most common mistakes made, is we have many people who are trying to tell us, oh, those are old documents. You need to get rid of them. You need to fill in the blank. My question to anybody who proposes that is, where did you get that idea? Did you come up with this yourself, or is this something that's being parroted by a group of people who are trying to convince you to surrender something that was paid for in blood and cost our people a tremendous weight in terms of time, in terms of their resources, all of which can never be recovered? You know, the cost and expenditure, time especially, I guess I explain it this way. I've done this with many of my students before. You know, guys, can you do me a favor? Reach into your pocket and give me a handful of seconds. Can anybody do that here? Okay, does that mean that obviously, since I can't reach into my pocket and pull out a handful of seconds, that time is the most valuable commodity that all of us possess? Now, whose time is that? Well, first of all, God only gives us, and I don't care what anybody says, bottom line is the Creator gave us only so much time on this planet. That makes it the most valuable commodity that exists. You can't trade it, you can't exchange it. You can figure out a way to come up with a value of it. We do this with these things we call monetary instruments. We come up with a peaceable way to trade our life's time. But this exchange is then of great value to me because it is the only, not just this, but anything that I trade for. It can be this cup, it can be my shoes, it can be her ring, it can be your shirt. I am trading my life's time for a tangible element to demonstrate my life's time on this earth. Private property is the key to demonstrating your liberty, your possession of your time. See how I brought this full circle? Your time is yours. I am not owned by the state. My time is not the property of the state.
You mean you want to be a sovereign?
That's right, exactly. Oh, heaven
That's
forbid,
unheard of these days.
as we know.
And yeah, they don't teach that to the students nowadays. That's something that's been taken out of the public school system. And if you ask a student today what national sovereignty is, they look at you like, yeah,
No.
what's that?
My
Does it
favorite, the Homer
exist?
dough.
If I may ask your opinion on the national ID card and its relevance to Germany in the 1940s.
Exactly. Actually, 1930s through the 1940s, or Russia. Now, most important is remember that most of it was done in Germany, was modeled. In fact, even Goebbels said this many times. He modeled it perfectly after the examples he had in the Soviet Socialist republics / the Soviet regimes from the 20s to the 30s. Let me give you an example. Everybody thinks that the spiffy black uniform that the Germans wore was their idea. Goebbels would tell you flat out that where he got the idea for the black uniform was from the NSKVD, who had always worn black as a death color as the interior police of the Soviet socialist system.
Like our SWAT teams today.
And why would they wear that? Because it's ominous and oppressive. And what did that guy say that we saw on YouTube here not long ago? Well, I wear this to intimidate you.
Oh my.
Now, the KGB did a little more than that. They didn't just want to terrify you a little bit. They stacked people like cordwood, shot them in the back of the head, and we can't even count the millions because there are so many. We're still finding them in Russia or in the Ukraine, stacked literally. When we say stacked like cordwood, people have to understand that that machine worked as a death machine. This is one of the things about socialism that I would argue again, despite everybody else's comments, these people did it as a factory job.
Oh, yes.
They didn't
Where they
just-
took thousands upon thousands of people out to the Black Sea and blew the ice out from underneath them to let them drown.
And this
Yes.
is historically, the sad part about it is documented by Alexander Solzhenitsyn in an excellent series of books. The First Circle is one example. The Gulag Archipelago, it was mandatory reading back when I was going to school. Now, of course, it's a lot of fine, real long words. But Alexander Solzhenitsyn lived in the gulags. He understood them. He was punished many times for just simply his writings. But he explained the system. And it is the system when people ask me, well, what do you think is going to happen in 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 70 years? That's what we in the Patriot Movement should be worried about. I am, because that's what they're trying to implant here.
And what if we don't go along with the national ID and we don't have one?
Well, that's just it.
Will we be persecuted against?
Absolutely. In fact, let's put it this way. They're going to try that, but the problem is kind of like the movie V, which of course nobody wants to mention. Well, the government doesn't want us to mention it, but the whole idea of dissent on the part of a larger and larger number of people is the only thing that is going to succeed that they're going to listen to. Because trying to make a deal with the crocodile when you're on his back only means that at a given point he's going to eat lunch later. Okay, he's going to twist, you're in the water, next you see the jaws, and after that he turns a lot, and you don't move much more, he stuffs you under a log, and he comes back later to eat. It's that simple. That's the agenda that we're seeing here with what these creatures have in store for us. We have to look to the future, but we can look at historical references from the past. Soviet Socialist Russia, National Socialist Germany. This is Fabian the Socialist America. Now, I'm mentioning a term most people, Fabian, that's a singer, a musician. No, these are Fabian the Socialists. These people have a motto, make haste slowly and strike with extreme terror. They have an agenda that is identical to all of the other socialist agendas. George Orwell wrote about this. Animal Farm explained it in its simplest forms, one of my favorite, of course, because, well, some animals are more equal than others, as we know. Well, we're going to prevent it, and that's why, again, as we come full circle with this, the militia is one of the many tools that was in place, has been in place, is in place, not as an oppressive tool, not as an offensive weapon, but as a defensive shield to protect our people. And one of the things that the militia is supposed to do is protect our brain trust, is to protect those people who are willing to stand up and work as a voice for the people.
They can kill the people, they can't kill the idea, no matter what they do.
Exactly.
What about the plank, the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto, and how are we paralleling that today in our society?
Well, as we know, the latest of the executive orders here, which of course attacks dissidents and rebels and immigrants, as we know, rebels and immigrants being the key. Just as with the Communist Manifesto, anybody who will be resisting the regime now will have their property taken. Well, in theory, they can do this. They may or may not want to be too overt about it right away, because more and more people are doing what we're doing right now. They're talking about it openly in the light of day. In order for a police state to work, it must work in darkness. When we talk about it like this, that's where we start to pull in the reins, and the horse starts to buckle at the knees. We need to do this, and we need to talk openly to all of our people, everybody that we can, because if they can do it to somebody you don't like, it's only a matter of time before they do it to somebody you do like, or maybe yourself. All of the Founding Fathers wrote about this. Even though I may disagree with somebody, the first and most important thing to remember about passage of any type of oppressive or tyrannical legislation or any tyrannical act is that eventually they run out of people to eat. And after they run out of people down the street, they're going to come this way towards you. At what point are you going to decide, hey, maybe this is a bad idea, when they're gnawing at your leg?
With bases in 130 countries that we have right now, this cannot be just the United States that has to stand up, and I think that the world is watching us, waiting for us to do this.
We have had responses from across the globe, literally. Email, snail mail.
54 nations at least that we know of. Of course, many others that are listening in different forms. One of the things that I would touch on, and I wanted to bring this up, and again, I know that we're limited in time, but I carry this with me everywhere I go. And I've spoken all over the country, and this little piece of rock has been virtually across the United States thousands of times. It's been to every state of the 48 continental states of the United States. And it's a little piece of rock. Kind of smooth, isn't it? It's kind of like a worry stone.
Yeah, worry stone.
Where that came from, and what that reminds me of, is a battle that we fought, and we won to a degree, but lost, and we should be ashamed of, for we failed the Davidians at Waco. And what that came from, where that rock came from, in fact, I got another little piece here. This was a cross made by a friend who found that, who gave me that rock for a reason. That's a piece of the bus that everybody saw on national television. The little rock that's there was underneath the remains of a baby that was left by the federal government after they went through and savaged the rest of the property. Weeks afterwards, when they were finally allowed to come in, this rock was left with a child who was murdered by our government on national television. And I keep this with me whenever I travel so that I can remember why it is that I will fight tooth and nail, no matter how they have tried to hurt me or my family, because I know that they would like to put my family or your friends or all the people that we know under or on a rock like this. Think about that.
We were at the Browns residence a few weeks ago for a concert, and Jim explained to him what had happened when we were up there.
Well, with the Homeland Security and the harassment that they put us through during the whole day with their helicopters now, I know they have a minimum flight height, and the flight they were buzzing us at with that helicopter was literally from the tree top level to 10 feet above what they call the Brown compound there.
Their home.
Which is
Their home.
Right.
That is
Randy
their
Weaver
home. They
present?
yes, Randy Weaver was there with us. Lisa's a good friend of Randy's, and he's been having trouble. She spoke with him, I think it was last Thursday, before we went down to the conference in Wisconsin there, when he was still having flyovers and black SUVs around his property.
Yeah.
and he was heading up to Montana to his daughter's wedding, and he's going to be gone for a couple of weeks. We were all planning on having another concert at the Browns coming up soon, and we'd like all of the public that is willing to support and stand up for it to please show up at the next Brown concert.
Yeah, we've had bands such as Poker Face. A lot of people
Yes.
don't realize we have all these people, and one of the things,
Fantastic.
we saw this, guys, the LA Times blatantly lied, and this is one of the things about the controlled press that they do constantly. They made this little comment, well, all these people that show up for Civil are all these old people, and, it's just old people from back east that, all nonsense. People, we have people from every walk of life, from every age bracket, male and female, everybody having a great time. They breathe well, they talk well together, they work well together. We just have a great combination. And what they're terrified of is that people will realize that.
Revolution.
That's right. It's a revolution and a
Gaining
restoration.
momentum.
And that's it, is because they want everyone to think that they're alone, that there is just a handful of people out there that are aware of what's going on and are working together. But as the public, if you go out and you take part, you realize the camaraderie that spawns from that, the fellowship among the people. You can feel it when you come together with others that believe that this nation is found upon freedom. There is no greater feeling than to be in a group of people that have that understanding and the power that comes from that. You can feel it in that group and when you leave, and you can know that you are not alone. There are many out there, and again, as Marcus said, it is not a couple hundred or a couple thousand, but millions of people across this nation. If we band together, we can win this next election.
This is Outside the Box News and Views with our guests Nancy and Mark Koernke. This is our final segment. I would like to thank them very much for coming up and being with us here today. Is there any closing comments, Lisa, that you would have?
Just that if you have any comments or you would like to address some of these issues, feel free to go to the website or to send us an email at otb.views@yahoo.com. We thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. So nice.